Hello, and welcome to Levels Plus Whenever, episode 148. Yes, this looks just like the beginning of episode 147. Recording them at the same time. As I've mentioned, I've had quite a few videos lined up, and that Taito video just kind of pushed everything out. But at the moment, I don't have any pickups coming anytime soon. So we'll just go ahead and get this episode out into the wild as well. And this one's kind of an interesting one. I think it might just be better to jump in and you'll see what it's all about. I found this on Kamimi's Blue Sky, and they had started this, and through social media it's supposed to be if someone likes the post you get another answer, and when you get up to 30 you'll find out what someone's favorite game is. We're not going to do that part of it. I just thought these 30 questions were really interesting, and thought it would be fun to talk about them for a video. So, a good opportunity to learn quite a bit about me. So, my very first video game. So, I'm going to take this in two directions. One is the very first video game I played, and two is the very first one that I bought. So, the very first video game I played is probably Donkey Kong on the ColecoVision. It could be Ladybug as well. I can't quite remember that specifically. But I do know that the very first video game I obsessed about was Donkey Kong in the arcade at the supermarket where my mom worked. Anytime we went there, I would always get a quarter or two and try to play that. So the fact that I now have that on my Switch too, in that original format, makes me really happy. The first video game that I actually owned myself is Super Mario Brothers / Duck Hunt for the NES. That was mine. But the first game I bought was Super Mario Brothers 2. That was for my 4th birthday in 1988, maybe 5th. Must have been my 5th because I was born in 83. But the game came out in 88. No, it must have been 89. Trying to get my year straight here. I don't remember the release date for Super Mario Brothers 2. But anyway, my birthday's in January, and my mom had arranged to order a game for me for my birthday. So this was the first game that I picked for myself to own. And I went with her to the Sears catalog store in my small town where I grew up. And remember walking in and walking past a bunch of appliances up to the front counter, and my mom negotiating with the guy to get the game from the back, and then being handed the bright blue cloud box with Mario on the front, and just obsessing over that on the car ride back home, and then taking it out of the box and finally playing it. It was a really strong memory. I've actually written about it on my blog, and it was one of the chapters in my Best of Levels Plus book. Really strong memory. So there you have it. First game I played, first game I owned, and first game I bought. So you got 3 answers for the price of 1. My favorite character. That flip-flops between Samus from Metroid and Jade from Beyond Good and Evil. I think what I ultimately fell on when I did the video on my favorite women characters was that it is Samus, for longevity reasons, but it would be Jade for singular reasons. So it's one or the other. It's really hard for me to pick between them because I think both of them have strengths and both of them have things I wish weren't attached to them. In Samus's case, it's the fan service for so many of her games. For Jade, it's the company that made her. A game that is underrated. I could list all sorts of games that I feel are underrated, that don't get the appreciation that they deserve. I think what I'm going to go with for this particular video is Hotel Dusk, Room 215. I don't think that game gets the praise that it deserves, and it's one of the best stories that I've had in a game. It's so grounded, but so well told. Great characters, really compelling moment-to-moment gameplay of wandering about trying to solve all these various mysteries to follow through on the one you're actively trying to get to. It's got intrigue, beautiful art design, a great soundtrack, a little obtuse at points, but on the grand scheme of things, I really feel like Hotel Dusk should have been a home run and a much bigger franchise for Nintendo than it ended up being, and I'm still mad Last Window was never localized. Guilty pleasure game. A game that I have spent way too much time with, doing things that I probably shouldn't be spending so much time doing. That's a good question. Or it could be construed as a game that's bad, but I really like it. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways guilty pleasure can be interpreted. Just off the top of my head in terms of time. Playing Perfect Dark in 64 solo in multiplayer, which I know sounds so interesting. I've spent days playing that just against bots. And had so much fun. And I'm looking forward to actually trying out Perfect Dark on the Switch too, because it's going to have some refinements to it. Actually getting into the solo campaign, but getting back into playing bots and having like so much fun. That is just like the perfectly designed FPS for me in so many ways. And it makes me sad that there's nothing else quite like it in a modern context. Game character you feel you are most like or wish you were. That's a fascinating question. I aspire in a lot of ways to be like Vice in Skies of Arcadia. I really like his moral compass. I really appreciate how he views the world and is a very accepting person. So I'm going to say that I want to be like Vice, and I work daily to achieve that degree of openness, friendliness, and just empathy, because he's a very empathetic character. Most annoying character. There's so many. So many characters that could be construed as annoying. Who is the most annoying character? I'm gonna go with a character that I genuinely dislike because I was so annoyed at how overbearing and stubborn he was, and that is Elzo from Iconoclasts. That is a character that truly just felt like was getting in the way of Robin's progression all the time, and just irritated me anytime he was on screen. You know that a character is not one you like when they lose an arm and you're cheering. So yeah, I think he was designed specifically to be overbearing and all of that. I think that was purposeful, but I took that to heart in such a way that I'm actually really surprised how much I did not like Elzo in that game. Favorite game couple? haven't thought a ton about this specific question before, and now I'm really having to think. Favorite game couple? I'm gonna cheat because this is not a quote-unquote canon couple. Mainly because the way that this game works is that you can pick a lot of different people. But I do think that Byleth and Dorothea in Fire Emblem Three Houses had a really good relationship. The problem is that from Byleth's perspective, you don't get a whole lot from her. And I'm referring to F. Byleth specifically because that's who I play as in that game. But the way that those two characters really do interact is really sweet and really loving, and I really like that. It's made me not even want to challenge that relationship a whole lot. When I did the Golden Deer route, I went with Mercy. Just because it felt appropriate, but for like a Black Eagles run, I know Idle Guard's there as an option, and it's something I should look into, but Dorothea just really resonated with me, and having her be with Byleth. I don't know. I'll have to see next time I get around to playing Three Houses. But that's the answer that's leaping to mind off the top of my head. I'm sure there's other ones that I think are really strong or really good, but it's just, I can't think of it right now. Best soundtrack, Chrono Trigger. That one's easy. Easily Chrono Trigger. Best soundtrack in a video game. I can't think of many songs on that soundtrack that I don't like. And if I were to actually like look at my remix ratio, I think I probably have more Chrono Trigger songs in remix form than any other game, I would bet. I bought 2 remix albums and have downloaded a whole bunch from like OC Remix, Swelling of Duels, and other people over time. I just love the soundtrack to Chrono Trigger. Saddest game scene. I've had a few really emotional responses to some games lately. Grease is one. I think Grease, just from start to finish, is an emotional game. But I can't single out a singular scene. It's like the whole thing. I'm tossing between Spiritfarer and Neva right now. I think both of them have really important spoilerific scenes that I will not discuss because it'll ruin those games if I tell you. But both of those games have some of the most incredible emotional moments. Truly, truly heartbreaking stuff that just makes my heart really feel. I'm gonna go with those. I think those are definitely up there. I don't know if I could pick between the two, honestly, because both of them have just incredible moments. The best gameplay of any game ever made. Boy, that's a tough one. Super Metroid's up there, but I do have issues with the wall jump. I think it needs just a little bit more forgiveness than it does. So I think if I am going to evaluate a game purely on how it feels, it's going to probably be Castlevania Aria of Sorrow, because I love everything about how that game feels. There's just nothing wrong with how Soma moves, responds, reacts to your inputs. Everything feels amazing. And it's a shame that they couldn't quite master that again with any of the DS games. They just got it right with Aria, and nothing else has quite felt as crisp and responsive to me. So I think that's my favorite controlling game. And having the soul aspect be a major part of that game is also really fun. There's a lot of experimentation. So I think, in terms of just pure game feel, that Aria of Sorrow might be the one I would put really high up there. Super Metroid is real close, though. I would definitely say that one's probably second. And if it wasn't for the finicky wall jumps, it probably would be my favorite. Gaming system of choice was the Switch. Now it's the Switch 2 because my Switch 1 is on there. It's really premature to say that because I've had the Switch for 3 days as of this recording. But I feel like that's an appropriate pick with all of the backwards compatibility with the Switch 1. The Switch 1 was my favorite video game console of all time. And literally everything is on the Switch 2. There's a few things that don't run well on it, but will eventually get patched. So that's my pick. A game everyone should play. Grease. Everyone should play Grease. Grease keeps climbing higher and higher on my list. It is the game that could eventually become my number one game at some point. It could topple Super Metroid. It could topple Chrono Trigger. I love that game so much, and it is just such a moving, powerful, impactful game that changed my life. I feel that everyone should try it at some point and just embrace what it brings. It's magical. A game you played more than 5 times. Well, there's a lot, but I will say Resident Evil 4 Remake because I have played through that about 12 since 2023. Current or most recent gaming wallpaper. At the moment, I have a Fire Emblem Three Houses fan art on my lock screen. Prior to that, it was the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics cover art. So, there you go. Post a screenshot from the game you're playing right now. Game with the best cutscenes. Oh, that's a great question. That's a really great question. I am going to lean towards Metroid Dread at this exact moment, because Metroid Dread presents Samus in the way that I've always envisioned her, and is the badass depiction of her that I adore. So at this point in time, that's some of my favorite cutscenes overall in a video game, start to finish. It's like I could think of individual scenes like Code Veronica with the intro with Claire running down the hallway. That's one of my favorite cutscenes of all time. Really have always enjoyed that particular scene from that game. Even if the rest of the game does not match that potential, it's a really good cutscene. Beyond Good and Evil's got some really good ones as well. Grease does, Neva does. I'm just kind of glancing around at toys that I can see. Splatoon's got some good cutscenes. Zelda's had some amazing cutscenes over the years. Xenoblade has. There's just a bunch that I could just keep going on and on and on about. But I do think that I'm going to go with Metroid Dread for now. Favorite antagonist. Vega's real high from Street Fighter. He's real high. Wesker's pretty high. Resident Evil, to be specific. Let me just take a quick look at those PowerPoints. Okay, so on my favorite men list, Vega's the highest. Iori's right above him, but Iori's kind of an anti-hero. And then on the women list, it's Francisca, who I would consider an antagonist, at least in Justice for All. And I do love her a lot. So I'm gonna say Vega and Francisca are my two favorite antagonists. Favorite protagonist, again, that would be a toss-up between Samus and Jade, and Vice. Those three characters are always fighting for supremacy for playable character. So I am going to just say it's those three and just leave it at that. Picture of a game setting you wish you lived in. I would love to live in the world of Skies of Arcadia. I wouldn't want to be in Valua. I can tell you that. But just about anywhere else, I'd probably be okay with. Favorite genre? This is a tricky one. Because I love a lot of genres. I love fighting games. I love a lot of role-playing games. I like action games, but specific types. I like action adventure / action RPG games. I like a lot of arcadey style games, and I like platformers. So lots of genres that I feel are really fantastic. I'd have to probably look at my 110 list and actually like break down like by genre, which would be a fun video to do another day. But off the top of my head, in terms of just immediate feeling, I feel like it's a toss-up between action adventure games, which would include like Metroid, Castlevania, Legend of Zelda. I love so many of games in that genre. It would be that, or probably fighting games. As I don't get super competitive with fighting games, but I do love a lot of them. There's so many of them on my list. And like my fandom for Street Fighter, for King of Fighters, regardless of current SNK, Smash Brothers, Project Justice, Soul Calibur, Mark of the Wolves. I love a lot of those games and their characters so much. They're definitely the thing that gets into my brain and wants me to come up with more stuff. So it's either action adventure or fighting game, but I will come back to that question in a future video. Game with the best story. I'm going to give a couple examples of games that I feel have really good stories and character writing, because that's not something that's listed here, and I feel like stories need good characters. So that's why I'm making like a distinction. I love Grease. She's a wonderful design, but doesn't have any writing. So it's all through her face, it's all through her artwork and animation and the world around her that makes me love her as a character. But I think that this question is asking about writing. So I'm going to give 3 examples of exceptionally good writing. I think Metaphor, ReFantazio, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, and Hotel Dusk have some of the best writing that create incredible stories. I would say all 3 of these games falter in some places with some of their story elements. Fire Emblem 3 Houses is so grandiose at points that you could feel the script faltering. Especially when you get to some scenarios where it's like, well, why wasn't this addressed? And then Metaphor, I think, is a really tightly written, but could have pushed themes even a little bit harder than it does. And Hotel Dusk can get a little bit convoluted and lost in itself at points with some of its character interactions being a little bit too scripted at points. But I think all 3 of those games have very compelling writing that wants you to engage with it so much. that I would argue that those are some of the best stories through writing and voice acting, in the case of 2 of those, that I could immediately think of. Like, in terms of good stories, we've also got, like, Chrono Trigger's an excellent story, especially if you take in all of its opportunities of side quests to really expand on the world. But then you get something like Untitled Goose Game, which you create the story of how you torment this poor town, but it also has a nice little lead up to the fact that this goose has been doing this for years. And you get story through the game itself. So that's a really difficult question for me. But I do think that Fire Emblem Three Houses, Metaphor, and Hotel Dusk are some of the best written games. Portal 1 and 2 also extremely well written games. Really good stories there too. Game sequel that disappointed you. Oh, there's so many. I'm gonna go with the one that I think is probably the first that disappointed me, and that's Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link. The completely drastic reinvention of what that game is compared to the original that I still love to this day. I think that is the one that enacted a sense of disappointment from sequels that don't quite match up. And I could probably pick one from every major franchise that I'm disappointed by. Castlevania, Dawn of Sorrow. Great game that is too stuck in grinding and lost a lot of the plot with forcing DS elements onto it. Really could have been a great game if it had more time and less gimmicks. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. Absolute hated that experience. Motion controls are the bane of my existence, I swear. On so many levels. Mario Sunshine leaps to mind immediately. Just such a step back from Mario 64 for me. Zelda, other than Zelda 2, Skyward Sword, another game that motion controls ruined for me. Street Fighter 4. I really did not resonate with that direction for the series, especially artistically. And it made me not want to touch Street Fighter 5 at all. So there's a few different franchises that I have a really strong liking to that I think have disappointing sequels, but the one that leaps to mind first when I read that question was Zelda 2. Game you think that had the best graphics or art style? This is another video. I really want to talk more about this and expand upon what this question could mean, because I love the visual aesthetic of video games and seeing how many different ways they can be interpreted. I think a game like Grease and Neva, which are completely hand-drawn and watercolored characters and backgrounds, is absolutely gorgeous. But then I can look at a game like Celeste, which is 2D sprite work and pixels, is also one of the most gorgeous video games I've ever played. So it's difficult for me to just say a particular game. I would probably say Grease is my favorite game artistically, the strongest art style that I've ever seen in a game. I love Grease's art style. I love the way it looks. But there's so many other games. So this will be another video. See, this is great. I'm getting all kinds of ideas to flesh this out more. Favorite classic game. What do we mean by classic here? Because classic could mean like 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. If we look at my list, Super Metroid's my favorite game of all time. So would I consider that my favorite classic game? Would I go further back? So this question's a bit too ambiguous for me. So what I'm going to do, just really fast, is I'm going to say that my favorite classic game from the 80s and the 90s, because we already know what the 90s is, a Super Metroid. From the 80s, that's a little bit trickier. because I can't remember everything. It's probably Bionic Commando for the NES is my highest rated game from the 80s. It's like 11th or 12th on my list. So that's probably what I'm going to choose. But that's a question that is a little bit too ambiguous for me. A game you plan on playing. Wow, well, let's look at the backlog. The next game I plan on playing. Best voice acting, Fire Emblem Three Houses. There's no other choice for me. All of those characters are voiced so perfectly. There's other games that have great voice acting. Metaphor is a really good example of a recent game I played with extraordinarily good voice acting. I think Silent Hill 2 Remake, Resident Evil 4 Remake, really good voice acting in both of those. But yeah, it's Fire Emblem Three Houses, and it will probably always be for me. I think that's the game that is just perfect on voice acting. The most epic scene ever, Super Metroid, the final fight with Mother Brain. I think that is one of my absolute favorite moments in any video game, and is an epic scene. I think it fits that bill perfectly. Favorite game developer is probably Nintendo. Core Nintendo. It gets hard with just saying Nintendo, though, because they have different branches that do different things. Like, Metroid's not the same people who make Mario in most cases. The Zelda team's kind of branched off from that team that made Mario. So it's like they've got all their different dev houses now. But in terms of a developer as a whole, I would say Nintendo, and then Capcom would be second. They've only got 2 games to their belt, but I think Namada Studio, who makes Grease and Neva, are my favorite indie dev at this point. I think Tango Project has been doing a wonderful job with their Wild Arms, Ninja Warriors, Pocky and Rocky, and Shadow of the Ninja remakes, although I haven't played the latter yet. But I think those are some of my favorite developers that I've played more than one game from. A game you thought you wouldn't like but ended up loving. I have a few of those. Hades, I really like a lot of Hades. I don't like roguelites and roguelikes very much. They're not a genre that I get into. I don't like having to repeat stuff. But I did play that a lot. I played it for several hours, despite the fact that I don't normally like the genre, because everything is so good in that game, and I do like it a lot. I can't say I love Hades, but I love a lot of things about Hades. But I am going to say Silent Hill 2 Remake. That game surprised me immensely, because I went into it with the lowest of expectations, and it actually turned out to be a better game than I gave it any initial credit for. And I am well documented critiquing that game in advance of its release, and was very pleasantly surprised. So I think that that's my choice, because that game is a miracle it turned out as well as it did. And I've already said this a gazillion times. My favorite game of all time is Super Metroid. Thank you so much for joining me, and we will be back soon with a lot more stuff. We'll eventually get to it all, won't we? Have a wonderful set of days till the next one. Take care, friends.